Day, everyone, and good day, Miss Tuliao. This day, we would like to talk about the content and contextual analysis of primary source. This presentation is structured as follows: Philippine cartoons, political caricatures of the American era, Filipino grievances against governorhood, and Corazon C. Aquino's speech before the United States Congress on September 18, 1986. To start the presentation, may I call Mr. Segovia to give some information about Philippine cartoons, political caricatures of the American era.
Cartoons is a collection of 377 funny cartoons drawn by Filipino artists. These pictures talk about a time when the United States was in charge of the Philippines from 1900 to 1941. Each picture shows how Filipinos felt about Americans coming and how things were changing. Some pictures show how American landlords mistreated Filipino farmers, making them pay too much money and taking their land. Other pictures compare the jobs of Filipinos and Americans, showing that even if they did the same work, Filipinos got less money because of unfair treatment. These drawings also reveal that Americans controlled Filipinos by taking important jobs, making Filipinos work hard, and asking for the respect and money. In simple words, these funny pictures tell stories about Filipinos feelings when the United States was in charge. They show how problems with money, jobs, and how Americans treated Filipinos.
To add more info, the drawings or cartoons the Filipino drew show how they felt about the Americans being in their country. Some drawings tell stories about Filipino farmers who had a hard time because of American landlords making them pay too much tax. Other drawings or cartoons compare jobs of Filipinos and Americans, showing that even if they did the same work, Filipinos got paid less because of discrimination. The drawings or cartoons also shows how Americans controlled and used Filipinos to benefit themselves, even making Filipinos pay them for protection and respect. Now, in simple words, the cartoons are pictures that the Filipino artists drew during the time the US was in the Philippines. These pictures show feelings about Americans' problems with jobs and taxes and how Americans treated the Filipinos.
Now let's discuss the common themes in Philippine political cartoons. The first one is the anti-American attitude. These cartoons often reflect an anti-American attitude prevalent among some segments of Filipino society during the American colonial era. They provide a platform for expressing dissent and frustration. The second one is nationalism and independence. Nationalism and the yearning for independence are recurring themes in these cartoons. They symbolize the aspiration of a nation striving for self-determination. Another prominent theme is economic exploitation. Cartoons in these collections depict the economic challenges faced by Filipinos under American rule, often highlighting disparities and inequalities. The fourth one is racial discrimination. These cartoons don't shy away from addressing racial discrimination. They provide a lens through which we can examine the racial dynamics of the time. Lastly, the fifth one is the satire of colonial authorities. These cartoons employ satire to mock colonial authorities. They use humor and irony to challenge the status quo and question the actions of those in power. These topics in Philippine political cartoons from the American era represented both the Filipino people's ongoing struggle for independence and self-government, as well as the country's complicated and evolving relationship with the United States at the time.
For the next topic, before the historical content of the Filipino grievances against governorhood, let me say some few words about the background of the author. Gregorio F. Zaide. He was born on May 25, 1907, and he died on October 31, 1986. Gregorio F. Zaide was a Filipino historian, author, and a politician from the town of Pagsakan in the Philippines. He is a multi-awarded author. Zaide wrote 67 books. He is known as the Dean of Filipino Historiographers. He was one of the founders of the International Association of Historians of Asia and president of the Philippine Historical Association for 3 terms. As a politician, he served as the mayor of his hometown of Pagsanghan from 1971 to 1975. Zaide, popularly referred to as Goyo by his townmates in Pagsanghan, Laguna, was one of the most traveled Filipino historians. He also authored more than 500 articles in history, published in both national and international newspapers and academic journals.
Moving on to the historical context of the text, Filipinos have repeatedly demanded independence since the Americans arrived in the Philippines, but they did not ultimately give them the freedom. However, the Americans established the Jones Law that states that they would only provide them the independence once the Filipinos had a stable government. They had they then started to appoint Filipino politicians to local government in provinces and municipalities as they only offered other positions in the government except for key positions like Governor General, Vice Governor, and Secretary of Public Instruction. Fortunately, they could prove that they could attain a stable government by being compliant with the requirements stated in the Jones Law and expected that the Americans would give them independence soon. In 1920, the sworn President of the United States, Warren Harding, sent Leonard Wood and William Cameron Forbes to the Philippines, ordering them to verify if Filipinos have met the requirements stated in the Jones Law. After their investigations and visitations in 48 provinces and 449 municipalities, their report exposed corruption and a patronage system that gave backlight to Filipino politicians. This offended Manuel L. Quezon and other members of the Nacionalista Party because the report insisted that Filipinos were corrupt, incompetent, and not deserving to be given independence.
Leonard Wood was then appointed Governor-General of the Philippines in 1921 after he retired from the U.S. Army. Filipinos did not oppose the decision as they believed that Wood would eventually leave the country back to the U.S. to be the president of the University of Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, he stayed and became the Governor-General until he died in 1927. During his reign, he corrected the misconduct of local politicians, vetoed several bills passed by the Philippine legislature, appointed American military men under the executive branch, and reinforced the powers and jurisdiction of the Governor-General, which was significantly weakened from the last government. Quezon and the others did not support these changes, which led to the cabinet crisis of 1923. The protest against Wood started when he reinstated Ray Conley, who was accused of receiving money from the gamblers. The former Manila Mayor Ramon Fernandez raised this to Wood, but then advised bringing up the case in court. Unfortunately, Ramon and Justice Secretary Jose P. Laurel failed as Conley pleaded not guilty and was allowed to be reinstated. This insulted the two when they learned about the reinstatement. This has put them in the wrong light of the case. As a countermeasure, they insisted that Conley must be reinstated not because he was innocent, but because he was an American. With this, Ramon and Laurel submitted their resignation, followed by Quezon and Rojas afterward as a protest against Wood's decision. This started the following demonstrations against the system under Wood. This protest are then summarized into a document known as the Filipino Grievances against Governor Wood.
For the last topic, let me introduce Ms. De Guzman to share some information about Corazon C. Aquino's speech before the United States Congress on September 18, 1986.
Now, I will share the summary or important parts of Ms. Corazon C. Aquino's speech before the United States Congress on September 18, 1986. Former President Corazon Aquino spoke to the United States Congress in September 1986 after the overthrow of dictator Ferdinand Marcos earlier that year. The Philippines was dealing with the aftermath of Marcos' regime, including a $26 billion foreign debt and a significant increase in communist insurgency. This was the start of a long process of recovery for the country. Cory shared in her speech her experiences and regrets about losing her husband, Ninoy Aquino. She offered a brief summary of how Marcos suspended the Philippine Constitution and shut down Congress, which ultimately led to the exile and death of Ninoy Aquino. Now I will call on Angelica Alberto to continue.
Former President Corazon Aquino discussed some of her goals as the new president of the Philippines, requesting emergency aid of $200 million and financial aid to rebuild the Philippines economy, including starting reintegration programs for the recovery of the nation's many regions and reinstituting and modifying the Philippines Constitution, which will be the initial steps towards restoring the government. The speech was emotional, and the former president successfully defended her stance on the communist insurgency, a sensitive topic in the US in 1986. To continue our presentation, Mr. Clark will be the one who end our topic.
The former president's speech received 11 interruptions of applause and standing ovation at the beginning and end. House Speaker Tip Munil called it the best speech he had ever heard in his 34 years in Congress. Senate Majority Leader Robert Dole praised the Speaker for hitting a home run. House Minority Whip Trent Lott said that emotional power of the moment had saved the day. This speech will go down in history as one of the former president's greatest addresses. And that's and that brings us to the end. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. That's all for our presentation, and thank you for listening.